Earlier this week at WWDC, Apple announced updates to all their operating systems, and the one that excited me the most was iPadOS 26. Apple is finally listening to the iPad community and giving them what they want. We finally have an actual multitasking window manager, a new menu bar, better background tasks, and a revamped Files app. And for someone like me who uses their iPad as their main productivity machine and content creation device, this was music to my ears. And I've been testing out iPadOS 26 not just on my M4 iPad Pro, but also the iPad mini and the new entry-level A16 iPad. And what's very interesting about everything Apple announced when it comes to the multitasking window manager, the new menu bar, better background tasks, they're not just for the higher end iPad Pro and the iPad Air, but they also actually work with the entry-level iPad that just costs $299. Well, $349, but $299 on Amazon, and I have a link to it in the description below. So at $300, Apple has made the entry-level iPad the best value in computers with the announcement of iPadOS 26. And you might be thinking I'm crazy, so let me explain. If you watched my review for the new A16 iPad, then I called it the simple tablet for simple tasks. It's a solid device for students, kids, family members, and people who just want to casually use a tablet for tablet-like experiences. And like I said, just recently Apple updated it by giving it an A16 Bionic chip. And aside from that A16 Bionic chip, it's basically identical to the 10th generation iPad. It has a 10.9-inch Liquid Retina display with a USB-C port, a front-facing landscape 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera that's great for video calls. It now starts at 128 gigabytes of storage, and it supports the Apple Pencil and the Magic Keyboard Folio. And like I said, you can pick this device up for just $200 on Amazon. So the specs are decent. I'm not going to say they're absolutely amazing, especially when you start comparing it to the iPad Air and iPad Pro. You know, it kind of pales in comparison. But like I said, for simpler tasks, this $299 tablet is quite fantastic. And with the new updates to iPadOS, this device is going to be a lot more powerful than you can imagine. You see, in the past, Apple has sometimes reserved pro-level features for the iPad Pro and iPad Air, and you never really got those on the basic iPad. But now, Apple has changed the game. For example, you never got Stage Manager, you never got extended monitor support, but with iPadOS 26, you're gonna get that same window management system that people have been raving about with iPadOS 26. I think this is the one true highlight feature that everyone is excited about. And like I said, I have been testing iPadOS 26, not just on my iPad Pro, but also my A16 iPad. And it's so beautiful to be using this, not on an iPad Pro, but on something as affordable and as basic as the simple iPad. And for those who don't exactly know what is so beautiful about this new window management system, let me give you a quick recap. You get true windowed multitasking, which means that you can resize and overlap multiple apps like you can on a Mac. You get a new windowing layout, so you can snap windows side by side and move them freely. You get persistent floating apps as well, so you can keep tools like Safari or Notes open while you work in another app. And up to 12 apps can be open at once in one view. You can also drag and drop between windows, and this makes workflows a lot smoother. And like I said before, Apple usually, really took those pro-level features such as Stage Manager and multitasking features and reserved it for iPad Pro and iPad Air. And now that is not the case. And if you get the iPad's Magic Keyboard Folio, then you're basically turning it into a mini computer. And you don't have to be spending upwards of $1,000 or more of getting that experience. And I know a lot of people in the comments will be saying that, look, if the iPad Air and iPad Pro cannot even be a great Mac replacement for people, how can a basic iPad that's just $300 do that? It's absurd. And I get you, I hear you. But here's the thing, not everybody uses computers the way you might, right? Like, for example, the M4 iPad Pro has completely replaced the Mac for me, but I'm also the same person that will admit and say that this is not the perfect computer for some people. And if you want to do a lot of graphic design work and video editing, then that basic iPad is definitely not for you. But if you're someone who likes to do simpler tasks, right, that you can also do on a Mac, whether it's with word editing, browsing the internet, going through social media, writing documents, creating presentations, you can do all of that on the base iPad and still get an amazing experience. And like I said, when you pair it up with the Magic Keyboard Folio, it basically feels like a laptop-like experience with that nice keyboard and trackpad. So now let's do some simple math. If you got the iPad, the standard A16 iPad, that will cost you $299. Another $250 for the Magic Keyboard Folio, and $80 for the USB-C Apple Pencil. So the price comes down to $650. And there are a lot of people who are buying a MacBook Air for around $1,000. And what they're doing on it is the most basic tasks. So what I'm trying to say here is that you don't have to go out and buy a MacBook Air and shell out, around $1,000 or so to get a computing experience for simple things. A lot of people I know, if you actually think about what they're doing on a computer, they can do all of that on an iPad for half the price. And technically that $650 number that I quoted, it could be even cheaper if you got something like, let's say, this great ESR keyboard that's just $90, and it literally looks and functions like a Magic Keyboard with a nice multi-touch trackpad and a floating keyboard mechanism with backlit keys. And it's just $90 on Amazon, and I've got the link to it in the description below. So at the end of the day, you don't have to get Apple's accessories even if you want to go even cheaper than $650, and with the new menu bar and the new multitasking features, better background tasks, and a much better Files application, this is a solid deal. And if you scroll through my channel, or if you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, then you probably know I don't talk much about the budget entry-level iPad, because I'm a huge fan of the iPad Pro and the iPad Mini, and I do think that the iPad Air for most people is the perfect iPad. But now that I'm seeing that all these iPadOS 26 features are also coming to the budget iPad, and you can get that full experience that you're getting on this for just $300, that is a steal, and it makes the device even better, even more powerful. But at the end of the day, I want to know your thoughts. I want to know your thoughts on what you think about iPadOS 26, and also what you think about the entry-level iPad. Have your thoughts, like mine, have changed regarding the entry-level iPad? Do you now see the device differently, knowing that iPadOS 26 and its great enhancements are also coming to it? Whatever thoughts you have, whatever questions you have, leave them down in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you next time.